Hey guys, it's Aaron from Team Endgame, and today we're going to be doing another set review for the Try Free Next booster. This week we're going to be looking at the Nectar clan. First, before we get into the new cards of the set, there are some more reprints in this set. The first being Maiden of Flower Pistol, she was recently a shop promo. Second is Pansy Musketeer Sylvia, I think this is her third or fourth reprint. Next is Maiden of Sweet Berry, she was also recently a shop promo. Green Shot Elf is another card that gets a reprint. And the next reprint, Maiden of Delphinium, which was another shop promo. And lastly is Watering Elf, which is reprinted with some new artwork in this set. She was originally released in BT05. I forgot to mention in our previous video, but there are also some special reprints in this set. All three clans, Royal Paladin, Nectar and Gear Chronicle, get a reprint of their respective Crit Trigger, Stride Fodder, and Perfect Guard G Unflipper. So for Nectar we get a special reprint of Maiden of Passion Flower, Valkyrie of Reclamation Padmini, and Flower Garden Maiden Mylis. So moving on to the new cards of the set, first up is the GR, it is Flower Princess of Beautiful Winter Inverno. So she has two skills. First is an Axe on the Vanguard once per turn. You can Soul Blast 1, choose up to a total of 5 normal units from your drop zone and rearguard, return them to your deck, shuffle. If you returned 5 cards, countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. Second is her Auto GB2 skill on the Vanguard. When your unit is placed on the rearguard, you can counterblast 1 and discard a card from your hand. If you do, choose one of your units with the Bloom ability, search your deck for up to 2 cards with the same name as that unit, reveal them and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. I've had to think about this card quite a bit, because I'm not 100% sure how useful it is. I understand the Soul Blast, return 5 units, because you're aiming to put cards back in your deck, so you've got targets to then search them out, bloom, copy, etc. The countercharge, soul charge is quite nice. In combination with the Soul Blast, you're essentially just sending 5 back and you countercharge 1. That's pretty good. Her GB2 skill actually leaves me thinking quite a bit. So it sounds quite good, because you're getting 2 units out to your hand based on the unit you called. First of all, if you call a unit, you don't have to choose that unit to search 2 copies for. You can choose any of your rearguards as long as it has bloom. So you could even call a trigger if you wanted and then search a different bloom card, get them to your hand, great, cool, it's ready for next turn. You do discard a card, so it is only a net +1, though it does leave you in the awkward situation that you need to have pretty much all your targets in your deck. So if one's on the rearguard, you can only have 1 misplaced either in your hand, damage zone or drop zone, otherwise you're not getting the full value out of this effect, which is where I suppose the first skill comes in. However, since it's an act, it doesn't actually go well with any of the Stride Break skills. Logically speaking, if you stride, activate the Stride Break, copy the cards, that's 2 copies out of your deck. If that's the card you're also looking for, then you've got to have both other copies in your deck still, so you need all of your copies active. That's, in my opinion, incredibly unlikely to happen unless you set it up. I will say it's very nice that they actually go to your hand and not your field, so that it is usable late game, since even if you have a full field, you still have the ability to search cards and add them to your hand. It's very good for deck thinning, and if played correctly, you can search particular cards for combos or grade freeze so you can get them to your hand for striding next turn. Overall, I would actually say it's kind of mediocre. I don't see it being run highly, honestly. I can only imagine myself running 1 copy, if that. There may be better cards to go in, it really depends on the deck. Though not 100% restricted to a full bloom deck, you do need some bloom cards in the deck in order to use this card, so you won't be able to use this in the likes of Musketeer or Maiden of decks, unfortunately. Moving to triple rares, we have Ranunculus of Searing Heart Archer. This new Archer has 3 skills. First on the Vanguard is a Bloom, Generation Break 2. When your other units with the same card name as this unit is placed on the rearguard, countercharge 1, soul charge 1. Second skill, Auto on the Vanguard. At the end of each turn, choose a card from your hand, you may call it to rearguard. Third skill, on the Vanguard, when your G unit strides, you can counterblast 1, soul blast 1. If you do, choose one of your rearguards, search your deck for up to 1 card with the same name as that unit, call it to the rearguard, shuffle your deck, and the unit called with this effect gets boosted until the end of the turn. So I think this is going to be one of the most sought after cards in the entire set. I'll start with a Stride Break skill, because it's essentially the same as the original Archer, though this one costs an extra soul, and instead of getting the 2k power boost like the old one, this one gets boost. I don't think it's much of a change, it's more or less the same strength in my opinion. The 2k didn't make much of a difference. I don't think the boost is going to make much of a difference, though it does give you more flexibility in which cards you can call. What really makes her strong is the combination of her first 2 skills. So obviously the GB2 skill is a bit hard to use, considering she needs to be your active Vanguard at the time that you call the unit in order to get the counter charge 1, soul charge 1. What makes this really good though is her second skill plays into this. At the end of each turn, call a card from your hand to the rearguard circle. So the timing of this actually activates after your stride has left your Vanguard circle and gone back to the G zone, and then this skill will kick in, meaning at that point you may, if you want, call a copy of Searing Heart to the rearguard. You get the free counter charge soul charge. Also worth noting, it does say the end of each turn, so that includes your opponent's turn. So they pass turn, you can go, okay, I'm going to call Arsha. Oh look, counter charge soul charge. Hooray, I've got a counter blast and a soul blast for my stride now, thank you! What I believe is an even better combo with this card is the use of Ideal Maiden Furia, which was released in GBT06. I will go over her skill so you can understand the combo. So her skill is a Generation Break 1, when this card will be placed on the rear guards. You can choose up to one of your units. If you have a Vanguard with Ranunculus in its card name, this unit will be regarded as a card with the same name as the chosen unit. So what this means is you can use Searing Heart skill. At the end of either your turn or your opponent's turn, you can call Furia. As this would to be placed on the rear guard, you can choose a unit that includes your Vanguard. So you can give it the name of Searing Heart. Searing Heart skill then activates, you get the counter charge soul charge because of Bloom. And then Furia's second skill at Generation Break 1, at the beginning of your main phase, you can choose a card from your drop zone with the same name as this unit, put it to the top of your deck. If you do, and you have a Ranunculus Vanguard, you can turn this to your hand. So essentially, best case scenario, at the end of your opponent's turn, you call Furia, it counts as Searing Heart, you counter charge soul charge. Great. Then you go into your stride phase, etc., get your pluses, start your main phase, you basically bounce this back to your hand, and then you can call it again if you want to for more shenanigans. I think it's a really consistent way to get the counter charge soul charge, which, considering Searing Heart's stride skill is now counter blast soul blast, it just makes this combo really efficient and worth using. While I did get distracted by that combo, I also want to point out that the fact that you can call a card at the end of your opponent's turn means that you will always have a unit on the rearguard ready to copy with the stride skill, which has been a problem with the original Arsha. Up until now, you've had to use Verano as your first stride to ensure a card is called from your hand, and then you copy it with the stride break skill afterwards. Overall, Searing Heart Arsha in combination with all three of her skills makes her an amazing card and really bumps the consistency of Neo Nectar. I think the ability to call a card at the end of each turn is really helpful to the clan, and essentially puts the effects of Verano into the Arsha card, meaning that you have more space in your G zone as well. This Arsha is a great card and an absolute must for the deck. The second and last triple referee Neo Nectar is Robust Maiden Noelle. She has two skills: act on the rearguard at Generation Break 2, choose a card from your hand and discard it. If you have a Vanguard with Ranunculus in its card name, until the end of the turn, this gets continuous on the rearguard. This card can attack with the Vanguard from the back row. Second skill, Bloom on the rearguard. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on the rearguard, all of your units in the same column get 4k till the end of the turn. So the first skill, given the ability to attack from the back row, is really good, especially considering Neo Nectar have a lot of power gain skills. It gives them the ability to have the multiple attack pressure that a lot of other decks have these days. I'm a bit wary that you have to discard a card for the effect, but it does make sense since you're essentially discarding a card to make your opponent discard the card for the attack. Even disregarding that first skill, the Bloom skill is actually really good. Having both units in your column gain 4k each, making a total of 8k to a column. If you're hitting 18, you're now hitting 26, which is 2 barriers broken. Considering the effect of the new Searing Arsha giving the card copied boost, means it is plausible to have 2 grade 2s, potentially of this or any other grade 2. So your 9 and your 9 is 18, plus your 8, that's 26. If not, you're still hitting your normal 16 plus 8, which is 24. It's still breaking that extra barrier for the extra attacks, which is good. Small side note, while probably not all that efficient, I do want to point out that if you put this behind your Vanguard, if during your opponent's turn you were to G-Guard into Rain Breath Dragon, since its skill is you can choose a card from your hand and call it to rearguard, you are able to actually activate Bloom on your opponent's turn. And since the card specifies units in the same column, you can give 4k to your Vanguard during your opponent's turn. While probably not all that efficient as a game plan, I still thought I'd point it out as it is quite amusing that it is possible to do that. Overall, I really like this card. Even if you never use the GB2 skill to attack from the back row, I think enabling your column to get 8k is really good. I still think it would require some testing because I think most Bloom decks are already well established at this point and I think they can do better than 8k, but it definitely has potential. Now we move on to double rares. We've got Rebellium Lily Splendorous Musketeer Myra. She's a new Musketeer stride. She has an act on the Vanguard once per turn at Generation Break 2. Soul Blast 1 and choose a face down card with Musketeer in its card name from your G zone and turn it face up. If you have a heart with Musketeer in its card name, until the end of the turn, this gets auto on the Vanguard. When your unit with Musketeer in its card name is placed on the rearguard circle, The unit that was placed gets 2k for each of your rearguards with Musketeer in its card name until the end of the turn. So this card essentially buffs all the Musketeer cards that you call. The maximum power that a single rearguard can get from this card is 8k. In a more generalized situation, you're probably going to have your front row empty after intercepting, so you'll call one, that'll get 6k, you'll call the second one, that'll get 8k. Both are decent enough numbers to break barriers. Unfortunately, since I'm pretty sure Musketeer can't perform multi-attacks, it's not that good of a card. If Musketeers were able to get abilities to call during the battle phase, then I'd like this card a lot more. Since it's not, it's literally just pumping up your rearguards for a beat stick. So I would say you're more pressured and likely to use stands for this deck in order to make the most of the power gain for each card. That said, I still think it's a decent stride for Musketeers. Other than this, they only have Cecilia, which pluses you a couple of cards, I believe. Unfortunately, I don't see it having that much impact on the deck. You'd probably only run 1 or 2 copies for an early or mid-game push. The next double rare is a new G-Guard. It's Passiflora Flower Princess Molina. So her skill is when she's placed on the Guardian Circle, choose one of your units. If you have 2 or more units with Ranunculus in its card name, or you have 4 or more units with the same card name as the chosen unit, this unit gets 15k shield till the end of the battle. Now first I want to point out that 4 or more units with the same card name is, I think, a ridiculous restriction for an effect. I highly doubt you're going to have 4 or more units with the same card name on the field, unless Euphoria is involved, but even in that sense, that still requires, what, 3? So you're probably aiming to get your boosters as the exact same 3 cards, and then maybe Euphoria to count as your last one, unless you're lucky enough to get the last one on the front row somewhere for whatever reason. As I said, I still think there's a high restriction for it. Having 2 or more units with Ranunculus is more likely, considering your Vanguard will also count as one of those units, so you will only need 1 rearguard with Ranunculus in its card name. So again, this is a great G-Guard, but unfortunately is very restricted to a Ranunculus deck. It's still a good card though, since it doesn't actually cost you anything, but I doubt you'll see it outside of a Archer/Bloom deck. Next double rare is White Clover Musketeer Mia Rita. So she has 2 skills, Auto on the Vanguard at Generation Break 1. At the end of your turn, choose up to 2 normal units with Musketeer in its card name from your drop zone, put them to the bottom of your deck in any order. Second skill, during your turn, when your G unit with Musketeer in its original card name strides, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets Act on the Vanguard once per turn, Counterblast 1, choose one of your rearguards with Musketeer and retire it. Look at 4 cards from the top of your deck, search for 2 cards with Musketeer, call them to separate rearguards and the rest go to the drop zone. So this is a very nice stride break for Musketeers. It allows any Musketeer that you stride into to get the Pop 1, Call 2, which is the generic Musketeer trait. We are a bit limited though, as we only have 2 Musketeer strides at this point. One being the new one, Myra, the second being the Cecilia stride from one of the Fighters collections. Its first skill is decent since it does activate at the end of the turn, meaning that your stride unit goes and then you can use this skill. Unfortunately, it isn't very impactful since it only puts units back to the deck, which is understandable since Musketeers are calling copies all the time, but as I said, it doesn't really do much other than that. Overall, I would still say it's a decent card for Musketeers. It's definitely a must-have in a Musketeer deck. It's probably your main ride focus. Thinking back to my current Musketeer deck, I think I've got Vera and Cecilia as my grade 3s. Cecilia is mainly in there because of the Cecilia stride needs a Cecilia heart. Considering this stride break actually gives the popping skill to the Musketeer stride regardless, you could take out the Cecilias for this card instead. Regardless, it'll probably need testing, but I'd say this is definitely a must-have one way or another for a Musketeer deck. The last double R of the set, Flower Keeper Dragon, is the new Sentinel for Neo Nectar. When this card is placed on the Guardian Circle, you may discard a card. If you do, choose one of your units that's being attacked and it cannot be hit till the end of the battle. If the chosen unit with this effect has Ranunculus in its card name, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck and search for 1 card with the same name as your Vanguard or Rearguard from among them, reveal it, put it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So first off, as with the Royal Paladin one, this is a new G-Guard that can guard your units, including your rearguards now, though it is still restricted from being called from the hand. Her second skill, in my opinion, is really dumb. It has no cost to it other than having a Ranunculus Vanguard, basically. While you're not always guaranteed to find a copy of any of your Vanguards or rearguards in the top 5, it's still pretty high and it has no cost, so I think this is a really dumb card. I would say you would definitely use this, but I am not 100% sure how much counterblasting actually takes place in a Archer deck, especially with all the new cards. So I would consider testing with this, because I think it's a really, really good card. But if you are struggling with counterblast, then potentially go back to the Unflipping Perfect Guard. Moving on to our rares, we have Lisianthus Musketeer Lorraine. Excuse my pronunciation. Her skill is an act on the Vanguard at Generation Break 1. For Counterblast 1, you can choose one of your units with Musketeer in its card name, look at 7 cards from the top of your deck, search for up to 1 card with the same card name as that unit from among them, call it to the rearguard and shuffle your deck. Her second skill, Auto on the rearguard. When this unit attack hits a Vanguard, you may Soul Blast 1 Musketeer and retire this unit. If you do, countercharge 1, choose one of your other units with Musketeer in its card name, and it gets 5k power till the end of the turn. So its rearguard skill is okay. It's a nice little pressure effect. If it does hit, it gives you a decent power boost of 5k to your other rearguard column, and a counter charge as a bonus. I do find it mildly annoying that you have to retire the unit as well, especially since Musketeer can't make use of the fact that you've now got an empty rearguard to then call a new unit and get an extra attack off. Its Vanguard skill is okay, I suppose. Counterblasting 1, searching for a copy is not bad. Sadly, it's not that good either, as there are better options out there for a Vanguard. And as I've said before, since it's an act, and only on the Vanguard, you aren't that likely to actually use the skill, since you should be striding anyway. Honestly, I think it's a pretty bad card. I don't think its rearguard skill does enough for you to consider running it. You're better off just running 2 grade 3s for potential Vanguards rather than having a rearguard skill by using this card. Next up is Sunlight Maiden Pora. She has Bloom, Auto on the rearguard at Generation Break 1. When your other unit with the same name as this card is put on the rearguard, until the end of the turn this gets Auto on the rearguard. When this unit attacks, if you have a Ranunculus Vanguard, this unit gets plus 10k power. I honestly think that's a pretty damn good effect. You're pretty much guaranteed to have a Ranunculus Vanguard if you're using a Bloom deck, in all honesty. 10k is a pretty big number. Big point to mention, it gets 10k power till the end of the turn, meaning if you do stand this with a stand trigger, then when it attacks again, it retains its 10k and gets another 10k because it doesn't say it once per turn either. I think this is a really good card and definitely has potential to see play. I'm not a massive expert on Bloom, but with Foria definitely taking up a grade 2 space, I'm not 100% certain if there is actually space for this card, especially with the likes of Noelle also coming out in this set, which is also another really good Bloom card. I suppose the only downside I can see to this card is that unlike most other Bloom effects, when this blooms, this is the only card that gains a skill. It doesn't allow you to select X amount of cards on the field and give those cards skills. So thinking of it that way, when this blooms, this is probably going to be the only card that blooms on the field, unless you're calling another copy of this to the back row to enable your 2 front row copies of Pora to bloom. Overall, a really simple effect, but I think it's a really powerful card, and it definitely has potential to see play, though as said before, considering there's a lot of decent Bloom cards out there that this has to contend with, I'm not sure if it's going to make the cut. Though I'm definitely thinking of giving it a shot since 10k power is a lot. Next we have Dreamy Grass Musketeer Tessa. She has an auto skill which activates on the Vanguard or rearguard. When your other unit with Musketeer in its card name is placed on the rearguard, if you have 3 or more other units with Musketeer in its card name, then this unit gets 2k power until the end of the turn. Then, if you have a face-up card with Musketeer in its card name in your G-Zone, the unit that was placed gets 4k until the end of the turn. So, honestly, the fact it can activate on the Vanguard doesn't really do much for it in my opinion. At maximum, if you're being efficient, this can only proc twice. Once for your 4th and once for your 5th rearguard. Though realistically, at grade 2 ride, you're probably going to only have 4 maximum, meaning this becomes an 11k Vanguard for the turn. With your boost, it makes a 16 column on your Vanguard. It only makes a difference if they ride a 10k base and you are going second. Other than that, 16 isn't going to make much of a difference, unless you're lucky enough that they ride a 6k / perfect guard. Even then, all it does is ensure that they're probably going to let it pass, which they will probably do anyway. As for its rearguard skill, it's only going to proc once, since it has to be a rearguard itself, meaning you need 4 rearguards and then the last one you call will activate the skill. Again, pumping it up to 11 won't make much of a difference. I would say she's more suited to giving the power to the unit called in the same column as herself, meaning that every call is essentially 6k. So if you pop the unit behind her, she gets 2k, and then the unit called in that new open rearguard will get 4k, meaning you get 6k to your 16, making 22. When I think of it that way, it's not actually that bad of a card, since with 1 Musketeer pop, you can get up to the next barrier. It does concern me considering she has to take up a grade 2 space, meaning there are less spaces for you to run units that can call more units. Overall, with all that said, I think she's an okay card. She's not amazing, but she's not bad either. She can probably easily be your last tech of 3 cards in your grade 2 lineup. I believe it's very dependent on what other cards you are running in your deck, whether you run her or not. On her own, I don't think she does enough. Next we have Amaryllis Musketeer Tatiana. She has an auto skill on the rearguard at Generation Break 1. At the beginning of your ride phase, if you have a Vanguard with Musketeer in its card name, you can retire this unit. If you do until the end of the turn, if the G unit you stride has Musketeer in its card name, you may stride without paying the cost for stride. I believe Neo Nectar are the first ones to get this kind of card, but I believe there are some coming out for other clans. I like the idea of the card because at the moment I have noticed that with stride fodders you're reluctant to call them to the rearguard because you want them in your hand so that you can stride next turn. So I like the idea that this card exists, that you can commit it, use it, attack, boost, whatever, and then when you need to or want to use it for stride fodder you can just by retiring it from the rearguard. Because this is more flexible, I do understand that it has the Generation Break 1 restriction on it. That's not a problem in my eyes. I suppose it does annoy me a tiny bit that you have to stride into a Musketeer. Even so, I think this is an amazing card. I think there's enough space in a Musketeer deck for you to use it. Since your strides and grade 3s do most of the skills these days, I can easily see this being run at 4. The last rare is Trust Maiden Odette. She has Bloom, auto on the rearguard. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on the rearguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, choose up to 2 of your units and they get 4k till the end of the turn. Second skill, auto on the rearguard at Generation Break 1. At the beginning of your main phase, if you have a Vanguard with Ranunculus in its card name, you may choose a normal unit from your drop zone and put it to the bottom of your deck. If you do, return this unit to your hand. So her Generation Break 1 skill is exactly the same as Foria. You need an Arsha Vanguard, put a card from the drop zone back to the deck, add it back to your hand, ready for you to use again. Her second skill is pretty good, there's no restriction on what Vanguard you need. Simply bloom her and you can choose any 2 units and they get 4k, and it can stack since it's not a once per turn skill. Technically this card can be run in any deck since you don't need an Arsha Vanguard for the bloom skill to activate. And secondly, even with the GB01 requiring a Ranunculus Vanguard, since it's at the start of the main phase, if you stride into a Ranunculus Vanguard you can still use this GB1 skill to return it to your hand. This flexibility gives it the edge over other Bloom cards in my opinion. Since already existing Bloom cards that give power, such as Pia, have no way to cycle back to your hand unless you retire them, I think that makes Odette a much better card. The flexibility of being able to add this back to your hand more or less at the beginning of every main phase means you can consistently bloom every turn with this card. Best case scenario, you already have 2 out, means that you return 1, heck even if you wanted to you can return 2. Call 1, first one blooms, give 4k, give 4k. Call the second one, both the others activate, give 4k, and then give 4k, give 4k. So that is 8 per card, that's 3 blooms, that's 24k worth of power that you've just added to cards. And you can effectively do that every turn, in any deck. Though you'll probably have a much easier time doing that in a Arsha Bloom deck. It is technically splashable and that's what makes this a great card in my opinion. First of the commons is Growth Knight Rally. Has an act on the rearguard for counterblast 1 and retiring this unit. Choose one of your units other than Growth Knight Rally. Search your deck for up to 1 card with the same name as that unit, call it to the rearguard and shuffle your deck. So this is essentially a grade 3 version of Maiden of Sweetberry. Unfortunately it's a hell of a lot worse, since it counterblasts and retires, rather than just for the cost of nothing goes back to the deck and swaps out for a unit. It's also a grade 3 and a 10k base. It's mainly just the counterblast usage that in my opinion makes it a bad card. Even if it was just retire this unit, search a copy of a card, then I'm fine with that. Other than that, not much to say. I think it's a bad card, it's not going to get used. Next we have Gentian Musketeer Antero. Auto on the Vanguard and Rearguard. When this unit attack hits, if you have another rearguard with the same name as this unit, counterblast 1. If you do, draw a card. So I think this is an okay card, I suppose. Back in the day I would have said this was amazing, but counterblast 1 on hits to draw isn't that good anymore. The only upside I say to this is that you can actually use it on the Vanguard. Since your Vanguard attack is more or less likely to hit, you can pretty much safely guarantee a draw, unless your opponent really doesn't want you to and decides to guard it. I can't imagine its skill going off that much on the rearguard, and if you did decide to use it, that's another grade 2 space where you can't use normal Musketeer cards to pop and call. Though as mentioned earlier, since your Vanguard and Strides seem to be doing that more often these days, you might be able to get away running this card. Overall, I wouldn't say it's terrible, it's a pretty good card. If you can't decide what to put in your last space as a grade 2, then this might be the card that works. Next is Mixed Fruits Dragon. So this has Bloom, auto on the rearguard. When your other unit, the same name as this unit, is placed on the rearguard, choose up to one of your Vanguards and it gets 8k power till the end of the turn. I'm a little lost what to say on this card in all honesty. It's an 8k grade 2 rearguard that upon Bloom gives power to your Vanguard, not any rearguard. Honestly, I would say it's a pretty bad card. If you want to gimmick with it and run it just so you can rain breath in your opponent's turn as a G-Guard to call another one of this and then give your Vanguard 8k, feel free, but I don't think it's good at all. Next we have a Vodka Doze. Auto on the rearguard, when this unit boosts a Vodka Doze, the boosted unit gets plus 5k power till the end of the turn. So all this card does is if it boosts a copy of itself, you get 5k extra in the battle, meaning your 7 and 7 or 14 is now 19. Yay? It's a really bad card. Next is Maiden Dancing in the Wind, Francois. Her skill is Act on the rearguard once per turn. For Soul Blast 1, choose one of your units, and this unit will be regarded as a unit with the same card name until the end of the turn. So I'm pretty sure we've had a card like this before that can copy the names of units. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Considering the main decks you're looking at using from this set are Bloom and Musketeers, I don't actually see how this card synergizes with either deck, since with Bloom, the card will already need to be on the field, and only the cards that are already on the field will activate their Bloom skill. Since this won't inherit the ability as well as the name, it's rather pointless in that sense. And for Musketeers, there's very few cards that rely on having the same name as this unit on the rearguard. I think off the top of my head, one of the only things that I can see this potentially comboing with is the Archer GR. Since the GR skill is an act, you can use Francois' act first, copy the name of your Vanguard, and then after you've activated the GR skill, since you have a copy of your Vanguard on the rearguard, the Vanguard will get a crit. Other than that, I'm not too sure about this card, honestly. I can't imagine it seeing play, as I think there are better cards to run in the grade 1 slot. I'd say it's a mediocre card, honestly. It's not bad, but it's definitely not good. And the last common before we get onto triggers is Baby Blue Eyes Musketeer Mei Len. She's a Musketeer Forerunner. Act on the rearguard, counterblast one card with Musketeer in its card name and put this unit into your soul. Look at 4 cards from the top of your deck, search for up to 1 card with Musketeer in its card name from among them and call it to the rearguard and shuffle your deck. If you have another unit with the same card name as the unit called with this effect, the unit called with the effect gets 3k power till the end of the turn. It's a pretty decent starter for Musketeers, it's a 1-for-1 and it also fuels your soul. Power gain is a little hard to use, but it's nice if you can get it off. Pretty solid Forerunner, not much to say about it. And this set also gets 3 new triggers, one being a crit trigger, Freesia, Musketeer, Rosalia. Musketeers also get a new draw trigger, Roselle, Musketeer, Randy. And they also get the heal trigger of the set, Chamomile, Musketeer, Nicole. All of which have no effects. Okay guys, that's it for the Neo Nectar set review. Thank you very much for watching. This episode features the last of the clans that are in the Tri-Free Next character booster. The next set due out is G Character Booster 2. We are Trinity Dragon, which features Great Nature, Oracle Think Tank, and Dimension Police. So we should be getting out an Oracle Think Tank from me, a Dimensional Police video from Yuri, and a Great Nature one from Mike. Please stay tuned for when we will release these videos. The We Are Trinity Dragon set is due out on the 24th of March, so we should be getting the videos out a week or 2 before the release of the set. Once again, thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and follow us on Facebook. Leave any comments and feedback down below, and we'll see you guys later.